Hello, my friends. Welcome once again. Another show, Fred Hampton Leftist. This is Nick, also known as Social Zen Man. And I have my good friend here, Jordan from Status Coup.
How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
One second. Sorry, guys. I just had to fix the audio issue. I got it fixed now. But anyway, welcome to the show. Welcome to Fred Hampton Leftist, Jordan from Status Coup. It's finally good to have you join us here on Fred Hampton Leftist. I don't know how much you remember, but you actually was the first person that gave me a platform back in the day when I was canvassing for Bernie in South Carolina. So I definitely appreciate you for that because you one of the people that is willing to go out there and actually talk to real people and give the mic to the people instead of the giant problem I see right now in corporate media where they only allow a few amount of voices come in. So I always had a lot of appreciation for Status Quo because you did that. So I appreciate that.
Nah, Uh, I thought at that time I'd be seeing more of you, so I'm glad you've started this, and glad we could talk.
Absolutely, because U.S. propaganda has always been bad. But I don't know what your thoughts on this. I talked to Ron Falcone about this. We feel like it's getting worse, and as late stage capitalism take hold, and the reality that we are a failed state becomes more apparent, the need of corporations to control the flow of information becomes critical. That's one of the reasons why the United States is one of the most propagandized countries, because there's also stories the legacy media doesn't cover, and that's important. That's the important part when we talk about propaganda. It's not only what how they cover things, it's about what they choose not to cover. So what they do, they give a lot of legitimacy to legacy media, but then they don't cover a story, for example, like the whole Julian Assange case falling apart. So they are able to control the narrative through certain corporate blackouts. Another example of this. Now we're talking about um, reporters that the state goes after. Stephen Dozinger is another example of that. And that's why I wanted to ask you about, because I like the work that Status Quo does as citizen journalists, wanting to cover those stories that corporate mainstream media won't cover. So for the people who are not familiar with Stephen Dozinger case, can you explain why that case is so important and why you decided to cover it, Jordan?
Yeah, so Steven Donziger is a human rights attorney, and him, along with other people on his team, sued Chevron civilly for essentially poisoning the Amazon in Ecuador. So Chevron, well, first it was Texaco, then it became Chevron. They were basically dumping their toxic waste into water, air. We've seen images before. The water was black, looked like tar. A lot of people in Ecuador died. Others, became very sick. It was indigenous people, and it's not easy to beat a fossil fuel company. It's usually the government handing down fines, which the fossil fuel companies pay because they just kind of enter it into their balance sheet. All right, we'll get fines, but we make plenty of profit killing people, so we'll just pay the fine. In this case, Don Zinger actually beat Chevron. Chevron was ordered to pay $9 billion, but to the people of Ecuador, but have never paid a cent, and instead have gone on essentially a corporate crusade against this human rights attorney, like basically creating this nonsense that he basically bought off the judge in Ecuador and gave false evidence in Ecuador, which is not true. So essentially, in the U.S., the federal prosecutors declined to prosecute Steven Donziger because there's no case. He won fair and square against Chevron, but in a twist that I've never actually heard of, when the federal prosecutors declined to prosecute, the judge then hired a private prosecutor to prosecute Donziger on behalf of the U.S., which makes no sense. And there's plenty of other really alarming things. He was never given a jury trial. He Judge selection is supposed to be random, but it wasn't random. The judge that was selected has ties to Chevron. So basically, this human rights lawyer has been railroaded for the crime of going up against Chevron on behalf of indigenous people in Ecuador. He's been under house arrest for 702 days for a contempt charge. So basically, the judge, who again has ties to Chevron, essentially was compelling him to hand over his computer, phone, devices, which has a lot of attorney-client privilege
Yeah.
documents, which, you know, lawyers are protected. Certain communications they don't have to hand over under attorney-client privilege. So because Don Zinger refused to, the judge held him in contempt, which is a misdemeanor, and he's been under house arrest for almost 2 years now under contempt for not handing over those devices. So it's gotten attention in independent media, nothing in the mainstream media. He lives in New York City. New York Times hasn't covered it. New York Post, New York Daily News, crickets. And Stephen expects to be convicted. But celebrities are coming out. Susan Sarandon, Roger Waters. You've seen the bare minimum from progressive politicians. A couple of members of the squad issued like a statement, kindly asking the Biden administration to look into this, but nothing more than that. So the other night we covered. I mean, I've interviewed Stephen Donziger, but the other night we covered a protest outside his apartment on the 700th day that he's been under house arrest.
Yeah. Is there any way we can get the mic volume increased? I just see some feedback from people that saying it's a little bit low. But yeah, what do we call this? Like, is this corporate fascism? Because we are seeing the state constantly side against the state when we have someone who is a civil rights attorney who's literally defending indigenous people. And I have this clip. I wanted to share this because you mentioned that you have people like Susan Sarandon who have a lot of respect for her activism. Let's take a look at this clip and see what she had to say here. So there's been resistance to get people like LC and a lot of the progressives to show support for this case. Is that the case, Jordan?
Yeah, and I don't think the audience could hear it. So
Oh,
just so
okay. Let me. I think I know what happened there. Let me fix it. Let me fix it for you guys. 1 second. I know the problem is. Give me 1 second. We play it again for you guys.
I've been there.
AOC, Jamal Bowman. It's in their backyard. What's going on here? I haven't seen that much from them. What would be your message to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Congressman Jamal Bowman?
Well, I understand that AOC is camping right now because we've been trying to get in touch with her. And so, as much as she loves the great outdoors and clean water, I hope that she reads the facts on this case. And though it's not her district, that she, in some way, understands the implications for everyone, and obviously Jamal Bowman also.
Whether it's
And that what we were saying there, and then apparently there's a lot of difficulty to get AOC and the squad to stay on this issue, and this is where a lot of my criticism come from, because we know our corporate media establishment will black out stories like these and Julian Assange, but when you look at AOC, Bernie Sanders, and their platform, they can kind of help turn the tide on this. If this is something they decide to flag, so I do kind of find that pretty disappointing that how hard we had to force their hand, because I understand the argument of the inside outside game. To me, that makes sense. And I have a lot of people that to my left that disagree with me on that. But if we had an inside movement that was actually responsive to activists, then I think it has merits. The problem is, it seems like we have an inside game that is not responsive to outside activists at all. Whether it becomes organizing for strikes, standing for Julian Assange, standing for those nigger here. There's a lot of examples where they kind of leave activists out to dry, and that on itself destroys the merit of the inside-outside game in terms of working with Justice Democrats. What's your thoughts, Jordan?
Well, the inside-outside game works if the inside's actually doing something, right? Like, for example, to be fair, AOC's probably being asked by everybody and their mother to tweet something for them.
Yeah.
I get that, but also, this is a major issue, and it's not like Jordan Chariton asking her to tweet something. It's like Susan Sarandon's asking you to tweet something, not for her ego, but because Susan Sarandon and others understand if AOC speaks up about something, that itself draws media attention to the topic, because AOC, if she speaks up for a cause or calls out Biden for not doing something, then the media will cover it. So because they don't really care about the issue because the media is bought. They care about conflict. So I think that's what she was trying to express. I think she threw a little shade there, like, "Oh, I understand she's camping," but yeah, no, it's absurd, and it's not just Stephen Donziger. I mean, AOC's been crickets on Julian Assange. I've covered Julian Assange events in New York. We've covered Julian Assange events in D.C., and the activists I've spoken with have said we can't get AOC's office to respond to us. So, I don't want to just focus on AOC. There's plenty of other people in the squad, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, the list goes on. Bernie, not in the squad, but obviously Bernie's Bernie. Takes very little to put out a tweet or in an interview mention it. So you have to wonder, there's obviously a reason they're not. And it certainly isn't consistent with progressive values. If you're not going to stick up for Julian Assange, if you're not going to stick up for Donziger, because to be clear, it's not just about Julian Assange or Donziger. If they get away with what they're doing to Julian Assange, if they get away with what they're doing to Stephen Donziger, that has a chilling effect on future Julian Assanges. And in the case of Donziger, I mean, they're already trying to basically criminalize protest in America. They're trying on the state level to create felonies for protesting pipelines. They're trying to label people eco-terrorists. They're trying to make it so that if individuals run over protesters with their car that are protesting pipelines, that they'll have no liability for that. I mean, in Ohio, this is separate from that, but in Ohio, they're trying to push a law to make it illegal to record the police. So it's just crazy. And, we already know the progressives are folding like tents as far as pushing Biden on anything or leveraging their votes. But if we can't even get these people to tweet on behalf of Julian Assange, I mean, look at it. It just came out that the main witness in the Assange case was making the whole thing up. We don't have mainstream media attention, and you barely have, as far as I know, no progressive in Congress has said anything about that. So, we need leaders in the progressive movement. I don't think it's all about electoral politics. I think we certainly need to focus on outside strategies like economic boycotts, which hopefully builds to a general strike. But yeah, I think Susan Sarandon's right to call out AOC, and I think more people need to if she's going to spend more time going on Morning Joe and, laughing it up with Joe Scarborough without, even making the very, very little attempt to send out a tweet.
Yeah, and what you point out is very important. I try to tell people that when we go after AOC and Bernie, we gotta make sure that we come 100% correct. And this is what a lot of AOC fans can't really deal with me, because I'm not here to attack her on like nonsense or like unnecessary drama. I'm calling her out on the real substance things, like for Julian Assange. Like, why are you not tweeting about Julian Assange? Why do you tweet about the Syria bombing when Trump wasn't president, but now on Joe Biden? Like, I feel like it's a waste when you're not focusing on those substance issues, and that's what I try to do, because these issues of Julian Assange and those things are extremely important. Because when you see how they're treated, and when you see the human rights violation that they are put through, when you see the torture essentially that Julian Assange was put through, and the fact that those things had was stayed in house arrest for how long was it? Like without even like a proper trial. And
700 days.
yeah, insane. So when I see those stuff, that's to me, that's them sending a message to journalists, and that's what you mean when you talk about the chilling effect. Not only does it create a precedent when you have a journalist seeing the torture and the hell that Julian Assange go through, that makes them think twice, and that is what makes it so dangerous. And referring to your, you were talking about how they're like criminalizing protests. They're already getting prepared for this stuff. And this is why you see a crackdown on journalists as well, because our ruling class is not as dumb as a lot of people will try to have you to believe. They are really calculating. They know exactly what is going on. They understand that, and I explained this earlier in my intro, that they understand that we are in a state of late stage capitalism. So when they do stuff like where they want to pretty much make protests illegal, that's them ramping up and getting ready about what is happening. And when things get worse, as I think they will, you're going to see people become more radical, be more willing to general strike. So they are getting ahead of the curve. When you see the Biden administration increase funding for the police, and then they put memos out saying that they're going to treat socialists the same way they treat neo-Nazis, that's them getting ready for people to become class conscious. Because when they go out, when they saying they want to go after socialists and anti-capitalists, to me, I'm worried like, all right, even if we do become class conscious, even if we do start a general strike, they're getting ahead of the game and getting ready to crush that. Because to me, it seems like they're getting ready to crush any sort of general strike or any other protest if people do become class conscious. And that's what these laws are trying to. They're trying to get ahead of the curve. Do you agree with that, Jordan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, specifically with Julian Assange, I mean, if people know their history, basically the military-industrial complex was insubordinate to JFK and basically overthrew JFK. I won't get into the whole thing because YouTube might take you down, but we know JFK, we know what happened with JFK. So the same things happen with Biden. I mean, I think Biden's very happy to railroad Julian Assange, but he's basically doing it because the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the CIA hate Julian Assange and hate that he exposed their criminality and war crimes. So that's really what's going on. The military-industrial complex is basically, getting what they want. Obama, I don't have a lot of nice things to say about him, but one of the good things he did was say, I'd love to put Julian Assange in jail, but I can't do it legally. But Biden doesn't have those concerns, and he's doing it at the behest of the CIA and FBI. But in terms of a general strike, absolutely. I mean, whether you look at Amazon, Walmart, Koch brothers, Blackstone's now buying up the country, buying up all these homes at depressed values and then, shooting up the prices and making it impossible for working people to even buy a home anymore. That's why I call it the United Corporations of America, because they're in control.
I love that.
But I also think, I think the word organizing is overused, but I do think if the progressives in Congress aren't going to do anything, you got all these different groups, Sunrise Movement and people fighting for Medicare for all, Justice Democrats, who, I'm not in love with at the moment. But if all these progressive groups came together and actually organized like economic boycotts, you'd start seeing change real quick. Because honestly, they can't force you to spend. That's the one thing they can't do. If Amazon, if there was a boycott of Amazon for a week, trust me, if those profits, if those shareholders, if it goes down a little bit, you might start seeing change. And I always say, look, you had millions of people protesting in the streets for George Floyd. So it is possible in America to get mass mobilization. Obviously, that was over, police brutality, Black Lives Matter. But imagine if like 1/10 of those bodies on the ground were also boycotting Amazon, corporate banks, this and that. You'd see change extremely quickly. So that's what I think we need to focus on. We can't put all our apples into politicians, whether it's Bernie, AOC, even Nina Turner. We can't just rely on politicians. I think most progressives are starting to realize.
Yeah, and another role.
Thanks for correcting me. BlackRock, not Blackstone.
Yeah, and another role of the media is to serve their part in the class war. That's the main focus I have as a citizen journalist. I focus on foreign policy, state violence, and the class war. And by actually talking to workers themselves, you can start to break through the propaganda. You can actually advocate class solidarity because when you watch the corporate media, what's the narrative that's coming out right now? We have a labor shortage because workers are too lazy to work. Instead of poor working conditions, instead of low wages. Now, with that said, you mentioned Amazon, and honestly, this is just another example of this. How much there's a story that you guys report on status Coup, and I want to ask you about this. You guys say we uncovered Amazon. I'll share it so you guys can see it. I think that'd be a good idea. Because not only are they preparing for massive uprising, I think they are actually gearing up and fighting a class war, the ruling classes, against the workers. And this is why you see labor shortage, is the conditioning of the workers and where they're paid. So I'll just read this tweet, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jordan. You guys uncovered Amazon workers in New York warehouse have been fading 90 degrees by midday. A worker told Seattle Times, with many workstations not having functioning work fans. So, Jordan, do you want to dive in and give a little bit more information on the story and how you got it?
Yeah, so we've been reporting on the Staten Island warehouse a lot. I think I've done like 4 or 5 stories in the last few weeks for a couple reasons. A, obviously, the failure of the Bessemer, Alabama union effort, you know, frustrated and upset a lot of progressives. But these workers in New York, which is not Alabama, and actually is 22% of the workforce in New York is unionized. That's one of the highest in the country. So it actually is a good opportunity to successfully form a union. Not that Amazon's not going to fight these workers like hell. So the workers are trying to form a union in the Staten Island warehouse. The Staten Island warehouse is where Christian Smalls, for those that remember, he was the Amazon whistleblower who spoke out at the beginning of coronavirus because Amazon was doing nothing to ensure safety. So they fired him, they retaliated against him, and the Attorney General of New York sued Amazon in part because of their illegal retaliation against him. So I've gone there talking to the workers trying to organize. And let me tell you, just going there and establishing relationships, it's a horror show, dude. I mean, there are people fainting in the warehouse because of the heat. There are people being carted off on stretchers. There is a story I know that I can't really get into because the person told it to me off the record. That's another thing. Amazon workers are terrified to talk to journalists because Amazon has instilled fear in them that you will be fired if you even breathe near a
See, how is
journalist.
that legal? That doesn't make any sense.
It's
to
not
me.
legal. None of it's legal.
That's crazy.
None of it's legal. So I know a story of much worse than just sweating, which I'm trying to get the person it happened to go on the record. But basically, Amazon, its net profit in 2022 jumped 84%. Their profits went up 84% last year, and they can't provide central air conditioning for workers. This warehouse in Staten Island is the size of 15 football fields. It's huge. Workers, in some cases, have to go the whole distance of the warehouse for certain job functions. And Amazon has only provided them fans for their workstation. Well, if it's 78 to 80 degrees in the warehouse, or in the case of the Washington warehouse, was getting up to 90, you're just blowing hot air in your face. There's also pregnant women that are working there that are extremely nauseous. I mean, I'm a dude, but obviously women could experience nausea during pregnancy. Try working 12-hour shifts while pregnant in 80 degrees. So it's really a terrible situation. And, as a journalist, when you report on things, you expect corporations to lie. Amazon, top of the list. They just lie and lie. They'll either try to get you to talk to them off the record so that they could try to stop you from actually reporting it, or they'll want to talk to you on background, which means you could report it, but not attribute it to them, which they also. So it's either let's talk off the record so I could try to stop you from reporting, or I'll talk to you on background so you'll report basically the bullshit I feed to you, which I don't do either. But they denied. They said, oh, no, we have cooling towers and we have a climate controlled system. and workers, have full access to water. So I responded, okay, well, why am I talking to 7 workers who are sending me photos and not only photos of the fans, but also photos of the complaints that are coming in to HR, written
And
complaints.
that's the problem with the media, because the media will straight out just repeat what the Amazon PR department would say. And that's why it's important to talk to workers, because there would be an allegation. Like I remember the whole PR battle when people were talking about how you had employees that had pooping bags. And then the Amazon people was denying it despite all the evidence to the contrary. I seen the workers' evidence of that. And then the media just ran out like, oh, Amazon denied these claims. That's the problem. That's why it's important to talk to the workers.
Yep. I mean, even the New York Times, like to their credit, they just did, I think it was like 2, 3 weeks ago, a long piece on Amazon's unsafe conditions during the pandemic. But they've just bent over backwards to like twist themselves into a pretzel to, give the benefit of the doubt to Amazon, be fair to Amazon, give context to Amazon. And honestly, that's just he said, she said, both sides journalism, but it doesn't actually tell the truth. Because if you actually speak with Amazon workers, if you actually, yeah, you could ask Amazon for comment, but I mean, that story is not the reality based on the workers I'm talking to. But I mean, the workers I'm talking to, you're talking about they're working 12-hour shifts in unbearable heat. All they have is fans. The water stations at this warehouse are often empty without water. So you're working in heat without water, and Amazon then passes around hot water bottles that have who knows how long they've been sitting. And a couple workers told me they don't even drink them because they taste cloudy. So it's really just a bad situation. And not to mention all the union bashing and stuff that while they're working in the heat, all around them in the warehouse, there's signs attacking the union and putting out propaganda about the group trying to unionize. So it's blatantly illegal. Some of the workers have filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board. But the reality is, this is a company that advertises with corporate media. If you look at Politico's morning newsletter brought to you by Amazon, Morning Joe is often sponsored by Amazon. Amazon advertises and sponsors with a lot of media companies, just like the fossil fuel companies do. So essentially, this economic hunger games that's going on at Amazon, and it's not just Amazon, by the way, a lot of companies, but this economic hunger games, they get away with it because they buy off the media that's supposed to be exposing it. And then Amazon spends more money on PR than actually providing, cool air to its workers. So then you see these fluffy commercials, Amazon commercials that, appease the resistance liberals into, ordering whatever, their yoga mat in 2 hours, that they get it in 2 hours. So it's a really terrible situation. And, I feel bad for the workers that I talk to. I didn't even mention there's a lot of workers at this warehouse that are literally homeless. So they're working 12-hour shifts and then sleeping in their car. Because in New York, what they're getting paid by Amazon isn't enough to afford an apartment.
Yeah, this is why, as an anti-capitalist, I always push back against the poverty BS that you hear out. Because they always say, oh, if Joe Biden passes policy, we're going to decrease poverty. Guys, you guys realize, and I reported this on my show before, that if you have a single mom with 2 kids, according to the poverty reports, who makes $22,000 per year, she would be technically out of poverty. That's a joke. Don't ever buy into that nonsense. The same way I don't buy into the nonsense that, oh, we got to fight for a $15 minimum wage. $15 minimum wage is not a living wage.
No.
And I believe that we should be asking for a thriving wage. We have people like Jeff Bezos not even paying any income tax. You got corporations getting bailouts, massive bailouts, trillions of dollars worth. And you think we got to ask for scraps? People need to stop negotiating low when we are in the class war. That's why I frame all my conversation around the class war. Now, we just talk about the actual conditions that the workers are living through. I want people to acknowledge, what does that do as a person? People living in their cars in poverty, people literally sweating to death. They like extremely hot, can barely take any breaks, doing that 12 hours a day. What does this actually do to someone's mental capacity, with their mental health? This is what we had to deal with as a country, and that's why we have to stand against the corporations who want to turn people to human robots. Because whether you believe this or not, this have a detrimental effect on our society. How can you be a good family man, for example? And this is why I always debunk the myth of the absent black father, because the myth of the absent black father is, oh, we're not there for our kids, we're not there for our family. For one, that's because we're getting locked up. But if you're a father that work at Amazon 12 hours a day, even when you do have time, how much energy do you have for your kids at that point? Now we gotta ask hard questions about what society we are running, and that's why I think it's important to fight for the workers and fight for improved conditions. Because if you have the workers and you have the majority of the country that's in a better living condition, you have stuff like dropping crime rates. You have stuff like a better neighborly living situation. You gotta think long term. That's why I always want to advise, and that's why I love that you cover this stuff, because the class divide in the media is why we don't see people as galvanized against the Amazon and their mistreatment of workers. That's why you see union drives against Amazon fail, because when you see the whole debate about Amazon unionizing going on, you have the class loyal people in the media just repeating everything Amazon needed them to cover. That's why it's important to talk to the workers to get the real story. That's what you guys do at Status Coup. And in general, stop listening to the oligarch class CIA spooks, because when you go on MSNBC, when you go on CNN, you're going to get the same type of people. You're going to get the same type of people that come from the bourgeoisie, upper class, who has a vested interest in the police state, for example. They have a vested interest in trickle-down economics. So, of course, they're going to report news on that front. Now, I'm going to transition this to another topic, because we're seeing everyone complaining about rising crime rates, right? And what coming from this class loyal media, they're like, oh, we got this crime rates going on, so we must increase and ramp up police budgets. That doesn't make sense at face value, because if we have a crime wave going on, and I don't even accept that premise, but if there was an increase of crime going on right now, that means that your increase of the police budgets is not doing anything to stop the crime. But they can't even bring that up because it's massive propaganda. So this is why I'm explaining to you guys. This is why it legitimately broke my heart. My heart was shattered when I saw Black Lives Matter people celebrating when Biden won. It hurt me seeing Black Lives Matter advocate and support a guy who created the goddamn crime bill. And this is what I was warning people about. I took a lot of heat. A lot of people know I took a lot of heat because my refusal to support Jim Crow Joe. And one of the reasons why I said that was because he was actively running to Trump's right during the. He wasn't hiding what he was doing. He was attacking Trump for not funding law enforcement enough. He was attacking him for being weak on crime. He was attacking him on being weak on foreign policy. And now I covered this on my show before. The Biden administration is using the fact that progressive groups, Black Lives Matter, they're using the fact that everyone fell in line and voted for him as an excuse to fund police more. So when Jen Psaki was asked about this, they're like, oh, well, we ran on a platform of funding police more, and we won. So, of course, we're gonna continue that path. This is exactly what I warn people about. Now, the reason I bring this up, because I love that you actually talk to people in the Black community about these Black issues. I follow your reporting on Flint, where a lot of people didn't get anywhere near that story. But you was actually talking to the people that was poisoned by Flint. And I heard the stories, it tore my heart up. And as hard as it was to watch that stuff, it's important to get it. Now, another person you talked to recently was Breonna Taylor's aunt. And you got her thoughts and feelings on the current state of the police state. I'm not going to put any words in her mouth. I'm going to allow you guys to hear what Breonna told Jordan here. Let me share it here. And then after we play the clip, I'm going to get your thoughts on that in general, Jordan. Give me 1 second so I can share it. Here we are. So I'm gonna get right to it about Main Long. Let's see what she had to say.
Now, President Biden and Camilla, what are you doing? Like, because if you can surely sign an Asian hate bill, you surely can sign a Black crimes bill. You surely can hold these police officers accountable. You surely can bring federal charges against these police officers who violate every constitutional right they possibly can of a Black person. Because we do belong to this country as well, too.
Biden made a lot of promises to Black people.
He did that. Because we were out there, was we not? Under Breonna Taylor's name? Did we not talk to Camilla Harriet? Was she not calling us?
Vice President Harris.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. She called us. We was at home, and she just was sending her condolences and told her like, hang on. You know what I'm saying? Like, change is coming, justice is coming. Um, yeah.
So I have a lot to say about that. Before I go off, Jordan, what's your thoughts? How was it talking to Breonna Taylor on, and what was the message she was getting across to you?
Yeah, and just to go back for a second, just so your audience knows, we got a mega fucking nuclear story coming out on Flint in a few weeks.
I'm hyped for that.
I'm
I'm
hoping-
really hyped for that. I follow your work on Flint a lot because there's not a lot of places you can get information on Flint. I legitimately enjoy the coverage that you guys do down there, so I'm very excited for that. But go ahead, Jordan.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so, we were just on a road trip reporting on a lot of issues, mass evictions, exploding homelessness, Joe Manchin's corruption. But I said, you know what? It's a disgrace that this woman, no criminal history, a nurse who was treating coronavirus patients, was literally assassinated while sleeping. She was in her bed. And essentially, it's a massive cover-up. I mean, it's hard as a journalist to prove a cover-up. This is as clear as can be, and I'll get into the reasons. And I don't know. I don't hear her in the news. Mainstream media doesn't cover. I don't really hear even independent outlets talking about this. So I wanted to speak with her aunts. And really, the value in going in the field and reporting in the field and talking to people in the field is you actually are able to learn a lot of stuff that you can't, just like being in a studio. So I learned, a lot more about the cover-up. First of all, the police told Breonna Taylor's family there were no body cameras from that night. The lawyer dug up, there were at least 30 body cameras from that night. So the police lied about that. Then you have the state attorney general, Daniel Cameron, who, by the way, is related to Mitch McConnell. I think he's married to Mitch McConnell's granddaughter. The Republicans have been priming him. He's a African American for to move forward and rise politically. He went in front of the country and said, "Oh yeah, the grand jury agreed with me that there was no evidence to charge these officers who killed her." 3 grand jury members came out. That's unheard of that grand jury members come out publicly. And they came out saying, oh, no, the attorney general literally didn't give us the option to charge these officers criminal. I mean, you could only charge what you're given evidence for and what you're given as options. And they were not given an option to charge these officers with crimes. They also said he lied about the process of the grand jury. You also have the police that killed her lied on the police reports that night. The police lied on the warrant, the no-knock warrant that they got a judge to sign. They lied about. The police lied that the postal inspector had investigated whether an alleged drug dealer, Jamarcus Glover, was picking up packages at her house, which the police claimed were drugs. The postal inspector said, I never investigated that. So it's just lie after lie after lie and a clear cover-up. But after the attorney general, the state attorney general, was exposed as lying about the grand jury, nothing happened with him. There was no calls for a new grand jury. There was no calls to impeach. Well, there were calls, but there was no teeth to it to impeach the attorney general. And also, there's an FBI investigation and a Department of Justice investigation. Well, go ask, Eric Garner's family how that worked out for them. Because Obama, they did a Department of Justice investigation into the cop who strangled Eric Garner to death. They didn't charge him. So, you could have like a federal investigation, but essentially nothing's been done. It came out also, by the way, that the local government in Louisville, so the mayor, they were kind of involved in this. So I don't want to get your audience confused, but to break it down, basically the only reason Breonna Taylor was even a target of the police is because the police have been, the city has been gentrifying the west side of Louisville. They want to push the black people out because it's mostly poor and black. So
now you teach me something.
Yeah. And they were trying to get this whole one block. Homes were abandoned, or the city had taken all the homes, but there was one home they couldn't get, and that was this guy Jamarcus Glover, who they were alleging was a drug dealer. It was Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend, so they couldn't get his house, so they had to figure out a way to get him the hell out of the house and seize his house. They couldn't prove that he was dealing drugs out of the house, so they then, while surveilling him, saw him leaving Breonna Taylor's apartment with a package. So that's the connection they made, saying that a nurse with no criminal history is, receiving drugs for him. So it was really a gentrification scheme under the guise of urban development and all this bullshit. They wanted this guy's house so they could further gentrify the West Side, push the black people in, build new apartments or homes so they could bring in yuppie white people. And she got killed for it. So this is a massive cover up, and the media is quiet. Meanwhile, if you go to Louisville downtown, it's all woke symbolism. They have, on the street poles, it's called Breeway, like a highway, but a freeway, like Breeway. And they're going to put a museum there. But as her aunt said to me, not in that clip, how can you bring justice for somebody if you're not holding the people who killed her accountable? I mean, it's really a disgrace. And
so
that's
they essentially turned her to a tourist attraction.
Exactly.
I mean, that's my first reaction when I hear that, because you actually taught me something new. This is why you guys should check out Status Coup. I follow Breonna Taylor coverage, and I actually didn't know that gentrification part. So this is why I told you guys the police state is a tool of white supremacy. And as someone who's an abolitionist, I truly believe the onus is on the people who support giant police state budgets to defend their position. It's for people who believe in reform. The onus is on you to explain why your reforms work, because you mentioned how you have police with body cameras there. I remember back before I truly transitioned to an abolitionist, and this is where a lot of reformists are right now. Oh, we can still reform the police as long as we have good reforms. I remember the body cams was supposed to be a good reform. Almost everyone celebrated body cams. Andrew Brown was shot in the back of the head. And the cops, when they were criminalized, the body cam criminalized them, the DA said, you guys don't have to release it. What's the point? What's the point of the body cams? What's the point of all these reforms if they can just not release the videos? That's the problems with reforms. Because who actually upholding those reforms? Jordan just outlined a ton of corruption. I'll probably have to rewatch this clip to break down even more. But who is supposed to be the one who is watching the corrupt police officers? When they're corrupt, they know each other. Sorry, I don't want to get too much on it, right? But this is why you actually need to go down and actually hear these stories. And this is the frustration coming from black leftists, because we feel like we are ignored on these crucial issues.
Go ahead, Jordan. I gotta say, this is in part my frustration with independent media right now. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole Jimmy TYT thing. I've talked about it before, but there's 50 fucking channels talking about the same exact thing every day, and I'm not labeling it drama. Like I said, I think Aaron Mate was smeared and had a right to defend himself. I think Jimmy has a right to go after TYT, but at a certain point, you have a lot of independent outlets with pretty large audiences that are basically doing just this nonstop hamster wheel of bashing other channels and commentary on other people's commentary. It's entertaining, but is it actually achieving anything for the progressive movement? I mean, I'm not saying you have to go out and with a microphone and a camera, but Jesus Christ, we need the corporate media is a large reason these cover-ups exist. So the point of independent media is to try and counter the corporate propaganda. And I just hope more independent outlets start elevating these stories, whether they're stuff I'm reporting on or other outlets, because let me tell you something. I've always said this, it's great. It's great. Sunrise Movement, protest outside Pelosi's office, protest in the streets, Black Lives Matter protests. It's all great. We could do that. But I think a lot of people are forgetting, don't let the media off the hook. When's the last time there's been a protest outside CNN or the New York Times or the Washington Post.
That's a great point.
I mean, basically, these media companies that literally are why companies like Amazon continue to break the law, kill workers, workers have died, is because the media barely covers it. I mean, right now, I was just watching before I came on. All the cable news channels are trying to push. Oh, the Taliban's on the rise to try and basically stop in Afghanistan. To basically try and stop Biden from coming out of Afghanistan after 20 years. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But these media outlets do it pretty much with impunity. There's no protests, there's no boycotts. So, I'm not saying don't protest politicians, corporations, but don't forget the media.
Yeah, the corporate media is our biggest enemy, and I'm not gonna get into it because I can literally do a 2-hour show on that alone. So just know what Jordan said is 100% true. They control the narrative, and they are responsible for the left being in position they're in right now. And the phenomenon that you explained, I talk to a lot of Black leftists. I talk to a lot of people who are in disenfranchised communities. Obviously, these are the people I want to elevate, and that's what we try to do here at Fred Hampton Leftists. And if you talk to Black leftists, and you talk to even other brown people as well, the same criticism a YouTube host you just laid out there. If you look at the most popular channels, and we're not getting into this too long, but I think it's relevant based on what you brought up. And a lot of these people I like as well. The most popular people, they are white. All the biggest YouTube channels are white. Once again, I'm not calling anyone out because I like some of these people. But think Jamie Dore, Kyle Kalinske, TYT, David Pacman, Humanist Report, Rational Net, all these people, they are the biggest YouTube channels. All white. We're not getting our perspective. We're not having anyone actually talking to Breonna Taylor's on. When you look at a lot of the drama that's going on, this is what we try and make us be different here at Fred Hampton Leftists, because I'm a nerd. I like focusing on foreign policy and the actual issues. I've always been like that. I always cringed at like the call out videos and all that stuff. I watch these channels like they're covering what other people are covering. We cover what this channel is covering, and criticizing that coverage is the coverage. It's like, are you guys going to talk about the issues that actually impact our community? That's the only thing I want to say. That's why I was getting tired of it. There are some important things that need to be said, but at a certain point, you guys are leaving a lot of people behind by not talking about the crucial issues. Because while you guys are talking about a lot of this other stuff, the Black community is currently drowning. And that's what we trying to spread our message here at Fred Hampton Leftists. And I also want to bring this up before we wrap up.
And by the way, just so you know, when I was at the Young Turks, I was telling Jank constantly, you got the resources, why don't you try to hire an African-American journalist or commentator and elevate that person? And they hired a Black journalist and then fired him in the same year. So, yeah, I mean, if I had the money, I don't have the resources TYT does. I'd be trying to hire Black journalists. Obviously I want a good journalist, but I'm a white dude. So I could go to Flint. I could go to all these places and, I care. And I think I'm a good reporter. But I do think we need a lot more actual people who understand those communities to actually be in those communities reporting.
Yeah, absolutely well said. And that's the crucial, because I could break down, I've done it multiple times, because I always say the United States is the most propagandized country, and that always elicits a strong reaction. But I think I'd do a good job backing my point up, and I want to discuss that with anyone. And the internet age changed a lot with how the establishment going to deal with the flow of information, especially now we're dealing with late-stage capitalism. And things going to continue to get worse. They will keep people moderate for a very long time. Very impressive how they managed to do that, despite living conditions. But you can only pull so much propaganda off. People are going to eventually wake up. So in order to slow that down, the internet radicalized a lot of people and allowed a lot of people to share information, but the ruling class couldn't adjust to it in time because it was such a new and revolutionary thing. But now I am starting to see them adjust to our new society and our new culture. So a lot of people became radicalized. A lot of information was shared when the internet first came out, especially during George Bush administration and Barack Obama. A lot of people were sharing information. But now they realize how much of a threat it is. They found a way to counteract that. You have them throttling independent news sources like Jordan, who was actually reporting on state violence and hard-hitting issues. And now you see people like Jimmy Dore, all the people talk about these issues. Cal from Secular Talk highlighted this as well. I want you guys to imagine this. These are giant channels. Imagine what it's like being an independent Black leftist media space starting out right now. The issues that Jordan talk about when you talk about media censorship and throttling of other channels, I've gone through it. Imagine what it's like when you first start off, when your YouTube channel doesn't show up anywhere. I searched the exact title of my stuff, tag everything, doesn't show up anywhere. I have subscribers tell me, even when I go live, no notifications, even though they hit the bell. Now I'm passing to Jordan. You have done a lot of reporting. I've seen a lot of stuff that YouTube done on your channel. Can you explain how they went after status quo and why this is such a big deal? Because I felt it, and anyone who is paying attention see what's going on and why it's so dangerous. So do you want to elaborate on that, and we can wrap up after that?
Yeah, I have the same issues as you. Like literally, we have moderators, in the chat who know when we're going live, and then when we go live, they don't see it. Or people have to type in status quo in the search bar, and it doesn't even come up. So yeah, I mean, YouTube's CEO basically admitted it, but you're already, I think, whether it's a black commentator or black journalist, you're already at a disadvantage just because of the country we live in, and then you have to deal with this Silicon Valley censorship, basically fighting an information war to hide you. And in our case, I mean, literally, when we started the channel, we came out pretty strong. I mean, I think we grew like 7,000 subscribers in 2 weeks, which was probably, old viewers I had at TYT coming over. And then I did a video criticizing YouTube, and like I have the charts, everything fell off a cliff after I did that video. So I think a lot of people think it's just the algorithm, but there is also human beings at YouTube that target certain channels, and I've been told this by someone at YouTube that
they bragged about that recently, didn't they?
Yeah, that
I remember. I don't want to get the story wrong because I was not thought about it. I remember there was a executive. I'll be broad, so I don't ruin name, but there was. I think Cal covered this. There was an executive at Google that was literally bragging, and they were selling it as a good thing. Like, yeah, we actually make sure our content is fair, and that's why we throttle non-legacy.
That was the CEO. The
CEO. Okay, so I'm glad you added that important detail. So the highest levels, they're just openly admitting this. So it's not. It's far from a conspiracy.
Absolutely. And in our case, it's already, listen, bottom line, if you're doing a video on the Flint water cover up and there's another video up like this, this channel's bashing this channel, that one's going to do better because that's just the internet and people like conflict and, hot takes and all that stuff. So we already, as status quo, make a choice not to do that and to really just do substantive reporting because we think it's more important, and we don't, I do hot takes from time to time, but I want to cover things that no one else is covering. I want to give a voice to people that don't have it elsewhere. So you're already not going to get like viral videos or things, huge views from that. But then when you have to add on YouTube essentially hiding your channel. So, I saw some comments recently like, Jordan, you're not growing, the channel's not growing because like you voted for Biden or, blah, 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 other bullshit. And I'm like, no, the channel's not growing because nobody sees it. Like a perfect example, Kyle Kalinske was nice enough. He did a video recently covering one of the stories we did on our reporting trip. And he told his viewers, like, go subscribe to Status Quo. We got 1,500 subscribers in a day. And I started seeing comments flood in from people that just subscribed because of Kyle saying, Jordan, you're back. Like, these are people that knew me from TYT that did not know Status Quo existed because they've never seen it. So I don't really think people truly understand, like, how bad the suppression is. Like, Kyle even admitted it. Like, speaking as Kyle, he said, I had the advantage that I was able to build a big audience before YouTube changed its algorithm and screwed us. So I already had that big audience. Jimmy, not that they're not great, but they already had large audiences because they had an even playing field for several years where they could, their shit was seen. And obviously their stuff's good, so they grew. Like your channel, my channel, other channels like us, we don't have that. So it doesn't matter if you could be fucking interviewing Jesus Christ and it might not be seen. So yeah, it's a big problem. I think independent media, I've been saying this for a long time. I think everybody's kind of on their own little island. I mean, everybody's going live pretty much on top of each other at the same time. There's very little collaboration between independent media channels. So I'd like to see independent media come together more, whether it's a network, more collaboration, whatever it is, because, you know, everybody living on their own island doing their own thing is not helping kind of get around this suppression. And the other thing
Good
I'll say
point.
real quick, because I
Go
saw
ahead.
some people in the chat, listen, I think a lot of progressives get pissed off when the establishment tries to voter shame them if they didn't vote for Biden. But then they turn around, those same people who don't like to be voter shamed, and then voter shame people who voted for Biden. I told my audience, listen, I don't like Joe Biden. I voted for him for a simple reason. I was actually at these Trump rallies. I covered them. And as bad as Joe Biden is, I was literally seeing like a white supremacist anti-vaxxer cult developing. So to me, I made the choice. I'd rather deal with Biden and like Neera Tanden than Trump and QAnon. That was my choice. And then I said to my audience, you vote for whoever you fucking want. I'm not telling you who to vote for. And then I criticized Biden and I covered him the same way I did. So I think the left and progressives in particular, and I saw this starting in 2016, like you got to get out of this mindset that like you're canceled if you don't agree with me. And like, if you don't agree with me 1,000%, you're a sellout. You're a fraud. Like, we're not a cult. And if you want to be in a cult, then we're not going to achieve anything. Because like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make you a bad person if you didn't vote for Biden. Doesn't make you a bad person if you did. I personally, what I didn't like about TYT is after they, said they're going to support Hillary Clinton in 2016, then they started shifting their coverage. And then they stopped criticizing Hillary Clinton. Then they stopped covering the Democratic Party critically. To me, that's the issue. So we don't, you don't. If progressives are becoming these snowflakes who can only consume media that satisfies 1,000% of their views, you're no different than a Fox News viewer. Like, it's okay if we all don't agree on every single issue, because
Yeah.
that's not
I'm
that's
not.
not a movement. That's a cult.
I'm not into this tribalism that I see a lot on the left. And this is something I had to deal with ever since I got a platform myself. Well, why are you talking to this person? Why are you having this person on? Why are you follow this person? I'm not doing it, guys. I don't buy it. Now, regarding the actual topic of the conversation, I have been 100% clear on this. And I have been wholeheartedly consistent on this throughout the course of me being a content creator. I am not into vote shaming. Now, what I do right now is not vote shaming. I'm reminding voters who they vote for because I think it's important to break cognitive dissonance on the lesser of two evils. But if you have someone who voted for Joe Biden because they hated Trump or they wanted to get Trump out of office, and I've been clear on this, I am not mad at those people. I'm mad at the people who felt it. They felt the need that they had to lie and apologize for Joe Biden and attack progressives for not buying into the bullshit. What I heard from and what I know Jordan and what he does, I didn't see that from him. And you guys know if I saw someone who's lying on behalf of Biden, I can't stand that. Now, if you're someone who
Dude,
just
I
voted
literally drank whiskey before I voted for it.
yeah, so it's like I'm not gonna get mad at someone for them fighting their struggle. Like that doesn't make sense to me. If they believe that they gotta get out of Trump, they gotta vote for Trump. Vote for Biden over Trump. I personally disagree with that. That's why I didn't do. But it's not important. I'd rather talk about the issues. Like I'd rather see what we have agreement on. Like to me, arguing and fighting over who we vote for should be the focus of what we are trying to do right now. Even though at the end of the day, there's no way I could vote for Joe Biden. But I'm not gonna attack anyone who felt like they had to do that. Because to me, that's building anti-solidarity that we don't need right now. That's why I stand on the situation. And everyone know how I feel about Biden, but I'm not going to attack Biden voter. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to anyone to cancel someone just that they don't agree with each other on voting and electoral politics. Because the same people, I'll wrap it up here very shortly, but the people who say they don't put a lot of stock in electoral politics, these are the same people who draw lines based on what you voted for. Like for me to get mad at someone because they voted for Biden over Trump, that's you inherently putting way too much stock into electoral politics. You
All I
gotta say
gotta
you
say-
don't, but you are. So that's why I stand on that, and that's why I have a Saul Rod on here who's great on foreign policy, but she voted for Biden. But I love her, and I like what Jordan do because even though they voted for Joe Biden, they are holding them accountable. Unlike a lot of people on the weak left who they voted for Joe Biden, and they are less likely to criticize him because they don't want to look dumb. They don't want to seem like a hypocrite. So I don't have any issues with someone who voted for Biden, but they're attacking him. I just don't get it. To me, I don't want to go too long on this topic, but I don't personally get like the tribalism. I see it all the time on the left. And
I mean, to me, the bottom line is it's not even about Joe Biden versus Trump. Really, it's about, I think progressives are rightfully angry, frustrated, cynical. There's no leadership right now.
Exactly.
Bernie is kind of asleep. The squad is folded like a cheap tent. I get it. I'm angry too. I'm the one out seeing all this shit up close. But you got to avoid cultism, because if you're going to start canceling people because they voted for Biden and they shouldn't have, and that makes them terrible and sellouts and frauds, or you're going to cancel other YouTube hosts because they're not saying exactly what you want, and they're not whatever to your liking, then just you'd rather be in a cult than actually achieve anything, and that's not good for anybody. So
yeah. But I said, I think we got into a wide range topic. We didn't get to everything, but we can probably talk a little bit more later on to expand on some issues. One last thing I want to add, because you mentioned, and I think this is such a great point. I'm glad you brought this up. Like people like Kalinsky and Jimmy Dore, they already had their platform before, and they're now being throttled now. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for my Twitter account, I have almost 60,000 followers. There is literally no way I would be able to do this. So if you guys acknowledge the benefit of independent media, you guys see why supporting independent media is so important. Support us at Fred Left, support Status Coup, because we gotta find a way to break the algorithm and fight and break their war against independent media. Because if it wasn't for my follower account, there'd be no way I'd be able to do what I'm able to do. I look on the algorithm, all my views, like whenever I look at analytics, especially on my YouTube channel in particular, like 90% of my views was because I linked it on Twitter. If it wasn't for that, nothing. So imagine what it's like for someone who's skilled journalist who don't have the followers I do or don't have the clout that Jimmy or Cal has. Just imagine how hard that would be. But anyway, thank you for coming on, Jordan. I know we actually plan on going on Graham Elwood's game show tonight, so make sure you guys check that out. It should be pretty fun. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into.
yeah, we're going on like right now. So
all right, so let's wrap up. Thank you guys for watching. I'm dropping it immediately. Check out Jordan for Status Coup. Thank you guys for watching. Anything last word, Jordan?
No, thanks for having me on, and I'll definitely return the favor. I'd love to have you on Status Coup soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That should be fun. Thank you guys for watching. We gotta get going on the Graham stream. Make sure you guys check that out. It should be fun. Thanks, guys, for watching.